From the world of politics to the world of business, this is Balance of Power. Live from Washington, D.C.
Live from the Rose Garden at the White House, speaking for the better part of an hour, President Trump finally putting some facts down when it comes to tariffs and what he dubbed Liberation Day, a massive ceremony with a flag-draped colonnade outside the Oval Office, where the president now stepping down from the stage where they had set up a desk, presumably to sign some executive orders. He may be on his way there with a crowd that is full of dignitaries as well as workers in hard hats. We'll keep tabs on this as he now seeks to put pen to paper, signing executive orders for reciprocal tariffs, announcing baseline tariff rate of 10% for all countries. Effective at midnight, we'll have the 25% tariff on foreign autos. Reciprocal tariffs will take effect later. Some of these will take effect over the next couple of days this weekend, and then later next week, reciprocals on the 9th of April, according to the White House. I'm Mathieu, alongside Kailey, Leinz in Washington, a couple of minutes ahead of our normal start time for Balance of Power. Kailey, we finally have some, if not all, clarity on what's going on.
Indeed, as you mentioned, a 10% base rate on all trading partners will be imposed, and then other countries will face additional charges, reciprocal charges, that include non-tariff barriers in the White House calculation. That the White House contends it is being lenient here by charging those countries a reciprocal rate only half of what the U.S. has calculated is charged on U.S. imports by those countries. So some examples from the graphics that the White House included in this announcement. China will face a rate of 34%. Obviously, that is materially higher than the 20% tariffs, which already were in effect on Chinese products. It'll be a 20% rate on the European Union, 24% tariffs on Japan. For Vietnam, the reciprocal rate is 46%. And of course, Joe, we are seeing markets react in accordance with this news, as you are seeing currencies and stocks, at least futures, on the move.
There is a 10% club here. The UK, Brazil, Australia, Saudi Arabia, among those countries with only that baseline tariff, Kailey, as opposed to the reciprocals. President Trump now, if you're with us on Bloomberg Radio, holding up the binder here to show the signed executive order that makes this official. As we heard from the White House a bit earlier, Kailey, tariffs going into effect April 5th on the baseline at 12:01 a.m. April 9th at 12:01 a.m. We will have the reciprocal rates taking effect on the countries that we're discussing.
But notably, two of the countries not included in this new regime are our two North American trading partners. That's Canada right. And Mexico will not be subject to these reciprocal rates. Instead, the USMCA exemption for Canada and Mexico will remain in effect. Remember, there were 25% tariffs placed on all imports from those countries, but those that were compliant with that trade deal were exempted, and that is expected to continue. Hence the reaction we are seeing in the Mexican peso, which right now is at the session high against the U.S. dollar. And we want to have more on that and the wider market reaction these tariffs ultimately will have, and turn to Harry Broadman, former chief of staff for the White House Council of Economic Advisors during the George H.W. Bush administration. Harry, thank you so much for being here. Obviously, what we're dealing with is a blanket 10% rate on all trading partners, even higher rates on those that the White House is dubbing the worst offenders. In terms of worst case scenarios for those worst offenders, is this as bad as it could have been? And what do you anticipate will happen in the economy as a result?
I honestly believe that we will rue the day of this announcement. This is really unchallenged territory, and I do think that Mr. Trump has made a drastic mistake in choking off economic growth. The markets are one thing. What really matters is what is going to happen at the real economy. And, you know, there's a lot of misinformation about actually who pays tariffs. The people who pay tariffs are the consumers. Mr. Trump continues to believe that it's the exporting nation that pays the tariffs. So, I wish the congressman were correct about, his car business, and we'll get over this, but I think it's going to be a very, very bumpy road, and we may well look back on this as sort of a knife edge of the economic prosperity of the United States for some time to come, and economic leadership of the U.S. and the global economy.
Well, you sound like an old line Republican, Harry Broadman. I wonder what you think of the current state of the Republican Party finding religion on tariffs. Will that religion go away if this experiment does not work out?
It's really, having worked on Capitol Hill and the White House and a trade negotiator, it's astounding where people's positions have flip-flopped. This is not sustainable. And I think, how we navigate this as a country, I think is extraordinarily challenging. But I think this policy will prove to be extraordinarily divisive in this country, far more than anyone appreciates. And I think, as I said, even more divisive for the leadership of the United States, in the world economy. After all, recently, Mr. Trump announced that he wants to cut off funding for the WTO. I understand a lot of people have misgivings about the WTO. I was one of the lead negotiators creating it. But I think, if we don't have the United States being the champion of open markets, I don't know who is.
Well, I want to ask you, as we consider the kind of responses here, about the notion that at least some parts of labor seem to like what they're getting out of the White House when it comes to these protectionist policies. The UAW on auto tariffs specifically said that this is necessary to end the, quote, free trade disaster. Are there elements of this that will be good for the American worker?
Perhaps, but don't forget, workers are also consumers. But on the working side, the notion that foreign automobile manufacturers or other companies are going to come into the United States and not bring with them advanced technologies that are going to be labor saving, that is, that reduce the amount of labor needed to make a particular product or deliver a particular service, is utterly naive. Secondly, these tariffs will engender greater inflation, again, because it's the consumer who pays them. So you've got technological threats to workers, and you've got higher inflation. I don't understand how one can compute that this is a big win for workers and consumers. It just does not compute that way.
We heard from Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, who's talking on Capitol Hill about this short-term gain, long-term gain idea, short-term pain, I should say. He said, quote, in the long run, it'll probably work, talking about the tariffs. The problem is, in the long run, we're all dead. So what happens, Harry, in the short run?
Well, let's hope we're not dead too soon. But I think the problem is getting from A to B is extraordinarily treacherous territory. And I understand, and I'm sympathetic with the notion that you make investments that are costly because you see the ROI, the rate of return on investment in the future. The problem is that Mr. Trump has not enunciated or articulated a transformation plan. He's building everything on tariffs. Where is the money going to be spent? Who is going to be spending it? Who's going to be hiring the workers? If he would have just announced a blueprint, said, rather than all these charts, like, here's my plan. I got a 10-point plan to rejuvenate the United States economy. We've not been treated fairly, perhaps in certain trade deals. We may not have the best relationships with the trading partners, but here's my plan. He doesn't do that. What he talks about simply is an instrument of tariffs without any analytical framework explaining how tariffs fit in to advanced technology, to workers, to consumers, and the like. There's no blueprint.
Well, the president has also suggested and touted investments that companies are making in manufacturing capacity in the United States, and has said that tariffs will mean more of that is coming. Obviously, those are longer-term capital investments, to the point that Joe was just making about the time horizon here. Will he even still be president by the time, if all of that does come to pass, those investments at least announced, for them to be fully realized?
Well, I want to say I hope doesn't go for a third term, because maybe he may be around then. But this is going to take a long time. The incentives, where there are incentives for tariffs to engender greater investment, are not going to happen overnight. And secondly, as I noted, the workers in this country are going to find themselves, when new investors come in, they're going to bring with them the latest technology, right? Those are labor-saving technologies. Those are not technologies that have more workers. They have less workers. And so this will happen, but it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. It's going to take a long time. And as I said, there's no roadmap articulated by the White House as to how we're going to get from A to B to C. It's all riding on tariffs, thinking that you wave a wand and this is going to happen.
It's great to have you with us in your instant reaction. Harry Broadman, former chief of staff for the White House Council of Economic Advisors in the George H.W. Bush administration. We thank you as we now get a better sense of where President Trump is going here, remembering that, of course, and remindingly, the reciprocal tariffs will not take effect until April 9th, and a lot could happen between now and then. With S&P futures now down more than 3.5%, we'll have much more coming up on this special extended edition of Balance of Power. Alongside Kailey, Leinz in Washington, I'm Joe Mathieu. This is Bloomberg TV and Radio.